Part two, my sister's death. After a year together, Jasmine had landed her dream position at Columbia Medical in New York City, while I was back in Denver, crashing at Sid's place again, and finally reckoning with the disaster festering in my mouth and jaw. 6 more root canals to undo the damage, plus surgeons carving out large chunks of infected bone. After years of my butchered tooth thumbs slamming against those poisonous, ill-fitting crowns every time I moved my jaw, they had finally arrived to fix it once and for all. It took a 12-hour operation to extract the braces and tear out those black zirconia monstrosities, an exorcism performed with dental tools. When they finally placed the ceramic crowns in my mouth and I saw my smile again, I wept openly in the dentist chair. For the first time in years, my mouth wasn't a chamber of nonstop anguish. From the acute relief of tasting wholeness again, of feeling what it meant to have a mouth that didn't cause nonstop, unspeakable anguish. And it was an absolutely perfect smile. It was one of the happiest moments of my entire life. But the happiness stopped at my teeth. My now long distance relationship was crumbling in slow motion. 2 months since I'd seen her, days of silence stretching between us. We turned into polite strangers, both knowing it was over, but too terrified to say it. We clung to some delusional hope of returning to those electric early months, but we were both too stubborn and self righteous to admit we needed to change. No inner work, no honest conversations, just the naive belief that love would somehow resurrect itself without any effort from either of us. When I finally worked up the nerve to end things over the phone, her last words were, "What makes you think you're deserving of someone like me?" Click. Single again. The words hit their mark. It was her way of ensuring I knew my place in her hierarchy. And part of me wondered if she was right. Maybe I've been punching above my weight. But I also knew it wasn't viable long term. She'd recover easily with a new private jet millionaire, while I felt like damaged goods, unworthy, unreliable, too broken for anyone. Suddenly, I find myself untethered from everything I thought I'd built. Without a home to call my own, most of my savings gone to the operation, and having served my one and only remaining tie, severed my one and only remaining tie to Vegas, I decided to, again, you guessed it already, didn't you? Return home to Kentucky. This time, I'd made the decision to ditch the SSRIs and heal myself through sheer willpower and organic living. I was bound to mentally feel better without a plan or with a new plan. But the LCS had other plans. Weaning off antidepressants is like voluntarily walking into hell. Brain zaps that feel like lightning strikes in your skull. Depression so thick you can barely breathe through it. I had been trying to build a side hustle at that time and blind offer land acquisitions with the hope that a few land deals would get me out of my financial ruin. But I could barely manage to read emails during my extreme withdrawals, let alone negotiate deals. It, like every other business attempt of mine, failed miserably after months of nonstop work. And then the real blow came. One afternoon, my mother burst through the door, screaming in raw panic. No, no, no. She screamed in a delusional panic. My sister Aubree was gone. She was found dead on her living room floor. Heroin had finally won. Watching my mother collapse under the weight of losing her second child was like witnessing something sacred being defiled. No parent should bury one child, let alone two. And there I was, brain fried from withdrawal, trying to hold together a woman who was coming apart at the molecular level. Aubree had been born exactly 2 years before me on the same day, but our lives couldn't have been more different. Hers was a catalog of trauma that started early, raped by a neighbor as a teenager, then again at 18 by the man who fathered her first child. By 23, she had 3 kids by 3 different deadbeat men, each one abandoning her to struggle alone. She stole from family, lied so compulsively that we stopped believing anything she said, and spent most of her adult life chasing heroin because it was the only thing that made sense and felt good in the world. She once described heroin as, imagine you're on a world renowned beach watching the world's most perfect sunset with $1 billion in the bank, naked supermodels on both sides of you, and you're immortal. That times 1,000. Then she looked at me dead serious and said, never touch that shit. That's the crushing fate of towns where real community has been strip mined away, where winters feel endless and opportunity feels like a myth. When your job barely keeps you alive, the best thing to look forward to is high school football games, and the local church spends more time threatening you with hellfire than offering hope. It's no wonder people turn to the one thing that promises immediate escape from a life that feels like slow motion suffocation. Her funeral was like a convention for the walking wounded. Everyone there had lost someone to heroin. In Kentucky, where economic despair runs as deep as the coal mines, people will chase anything that promises relief. Eastern philosophy, the pursuit of enlightenment, shadow work, and meditation practices don't exactly thrive in places where survival itself is the daily spiritual practice. When life feels abandoned by hope, sometimes a needle filled with immeasurable bliss feels like the only prayer that gets answered. After her death, grief settled into my bones like I was drowning from the inside out. I was desperate for anything to shake me loose. When I told Chris how dark things had gotten, he invited me to Canada for another psychedelic journey, a possible reset for a shattered psyche. Desperate, I booked the flight. But what began as another frantic escape attempt became something else entirely, the real start of my spiritual awakening.